I have been spending too much time alone. Not alone, in the company of a cat, which is worse. Men who spend their waking hours walled off in some alley of the self can at least claim the quiet dignity that accompanies true solitude. Beards may grow long, teeth brown, but a man in isolation has at least a chance at virtue. I, however, am in love with a fuzzy white kitten, and in the throes of some austere and worthy crisis of mind and heart, will suddenly scoop the animal up like an adoring mother and whisper into its ear one of 10 nicknames I've made up. My sweet squee, don't you ever leave me. Poking the wet nose with an enthusiastic forefinger, a deep scratch between the shoulder blades, the animal's cross-eyed smile sending a wave of pleasure through me. Disgusting. Sometimes these reveries may last 5 minutes or more and find me splaying the helpless creature out on the couch, pushing his long white fur the wrong direction. Does he like that? Letting him bite my hand, delighting in the tiny stinging teeth pressed into the soft flesh of my outstretched palm, scolding him to the ridiculous high-pitched voice. No! Who's a bad kitty? Full-face! It is difficult to submerge oneself with any sincerity into questions involving the trajectory of peaceful relations in the Middle East or the future of literature in a technologically obese society when a prancing kitten decides your pinky might be a mouse and leaps over your laptop to pounce. Somehow an entire paragraph self-deletes. My naughty little face, I hear myself say. It wasn't always this way. From the perspective of true steel-jawed manhood, I am a pale gadfly where once I was gladiator. Yes, there was a time when I was more brave. A brief and incomplete accounting of my heroic deeds to date. On the occasion of my 29th birthday and in the company of 3 drunk friends, I took hold of an electric fence on purpose. The force of the shock knocked me backwards into the street and afterwards made my hand twitch involuntarily for 5 full minutes. 3 days after September 11th in 2001, I hitchhiked from Anchorage, Alaska to Seattle, Washington. Across the tundra and down the Alcan Highway, 2,500 miles. It took 4 days. I carried a can of bear repellent with me. I spent a night in jail for traveling over international lines without a passport. During college, under the spell of an imagined spiritual crisis, I spent an entire spring break walking alone through a desert in southern Utah with only a gallon of water and 6 oranges. I slept on the bare earth. These are the things you do when possessed by an urgent and unclear need to demonstrate your grit to yourself and God and anyone else who would care to watch. But now, in my gravity-succumbing 30s, I'm all ice cream and kitty cats. What happened? I decide to reach out to a true friend. I am a cat lady. She texts back. Everyone who knows you saw it coming. I go for a walk. I reflect. The crisp bronze leaves of fallen autumn rustle under my feet like radio static. The light lays flat in the gray sky, shadowless. I wonder, is it better to stay soft, to keep to the foothills of life, to watch football on Sunday afternoons, eating too many nachos with your sweater-wearing friends? Or is it better to be a wild-eyed, stuttering prophet in scratchy sackcloth? There was a time I felt my path led to sackcloth, but then I found I like beautiful things too much. A worn-in acoustic guitar, a well-wrought sentence cleaved of unnecessaries, a pretty girl. I walk along a busy street. Cars pass me. Only half the headlights are on. That twilight hour when not everyone is doing the same thing. Have I abandoned my true calling? Am I a spiritual fat man? Am I just a random person on the planet Earth groping his way through make-believe and mystery like everyone else? Sure, I could live in the desert, but there's no special virtue to eating bugs. especially when a sushi restaurant is in walking distance. Sushi. I call my friend Jacob and ask him to join me for dinner. He says yes. I keep walking. Over California rolls and pints of Sapporo, I catch him up. The cat thing, the former glory of unreflective masculinity. I ask him what he thinks. Dude, you're probably gay, he offers. I mean, you dress great. I cast a quick glance down. Denim jacket, antique white cotton button-down, plaid Madras bow tie, matching leather belt and shoes. Fair enough. I can see why you might say that, and well, I don't want to sound defensive, but I don't like dudes. Have you ever tried them? What do you mean? Jacob shrugs. I didn't think I liked sushi. Then I tried it. He pushes a section of rainbow roll into his mouth. I love sushi. I weigh his words and stir wasabi into the soy sauce. I made out with a dude once. I didn't like it. What didn't you like about it? Everything. Whiskers. Gross. He was a dude. Dudes are disgusting. I like girls. They're soft and they smell nice and they're delicate. Who wouldn't like a girl? I don't know, man. I'm not the gay one. He looks at me and smiles and eats the whole pile of pickled ginger off his plate in one bite. I let Jacob pay for dinner. We shake hands. He walks back to his car and says over his shoulder, "You're fine. It's okay to like cats." Mark Twain loved cats, I shout back. I stand on the sidewalk in my denim finery and consider his words. It's not the cat, I finally say to no one. I turn and start walking back home. The sidewalk I'm on follows a road that bends evasively around a college campus. As I walk, a handsome 20-something with a short black haircut steps from the front door of a Thai restaurant, a pretty honey blonde girl right behind him. They fall in step in front of me. For a while they walk side by side. Then suddenly the fingers of the boy's right hand make the smallest reaching motion, and all at once they are holding hands in the not quite all the way style of familiar lovers. A casual intersection of hearts and fingers. We all continue this way, lovers and witness, for 100 or so feet, until the couple reaches their car. The car chirps, the hands separate, and the girl walks alone to the passenger's side. The boy lifts the latch on the driver's door and slides inside. The passenger door slams shut, the lights come on, and just as I walk past, the car pulls out into the street and disappears. I consider one of my more recent romances. The bullet points. Young girl, fair-faced, overtly indifferent to my presence one way or another, but with a certain whispered affection that came in unlikely moments like a surprise. For whatever reason, this is the kind of girl I like, and like her, I did. I read to her aloud from my favorite books. I rubbed her feet. I made her breakfast. I wrote a song for her. What happened? I started to be myself is what happened. Too excitable, too many opinions, too much thinking about everything. Just too much. She didn't care for the sum total. The phone in my pocket vibrates. I pull it out and look at the screen. My true friend. It says, "Put the cat down. I am calling you." As I'm reading the text, the phone rings and I answer it. I say, "Another thing that makes me mad. Dudes don't open the doors anymore. Bad manners are everywhere." "It's worse than that," comes the sharpened voice. "I hear they stopped teaching cursive in elementary school." Hilarious. Take me seriously or I'm hanging up. Honey, it is impossible to take you seriously. You wear a bow tie, and I bet at this moment your belt matches your shoes. Am I right? I don't say anything. Also, you like cats. Who likes cats? Lonely people. Barf, she says. Everyone is lonely. Write us a song. I am going to write a song about good manners. Do it, she says. God knows we need you to show us the way. You're our last hope, Obi-Wan. Why are you in such a good mood? You know why? I'm talking to you, lover boy. Look, she says, I can tell you're having one of your flights of fancy. You've probably been walking around your neighborhood for the last hour looking at leaves and thinking about whichever girl it is you're currently hung up on. Somewhere along the way, something caught your eye, some small detail, and you've spun it like a pizza dough into some universal truth about the nature of being alive in the 21st century. No doubt you're feeling depressed, misunderstood, etc. How close am I? I kick at some leaves. Why again did you call? To cheer you up. It's not like your goddamn cat's going to do that. I push my hand through my hair. It's not working. Of course it's working. You love this. Someone reached out and scooped your furry ass up and is scratching you under your ugly chin. Messed up as it is, I swear this is the way you like to be loved. I can hear you purring through the phone. You are annoying and I do not like you. Stick it, she says. My kids are calling me. I'll talk to you later. She hangs up. I round the last corner to my house. Night is in full bloom. Darkness leans on my street like an old man. I walk up to my house and pause. A warm yellow light spills out of the two front windows into the yard. In the rightmost frame, the unmistakable silhouette of my cat stands in the sill. I didn't really plan what I was going to read. I thought I would just start at the beginning for the beginning, but let's skip around a bit, shall we? Birthday cards, that's a different tone. Some people like that one. I hope it's working. I don't know. Maybe you guys can hear. This one is called Birthday Cards. I was in a mood. It was late, very late, and I was walking through a quiet neighborhood in Green Hills. Not walking, cantering. Do people canter? I was going somewhere quickly, and I was in a mood. A car drove past, flashed its brights. I must have looked like a jogger. Maybe someone who came home from the night shift and wanted a little exercise while the air was cool. White t-shirt, off-brand gray shorts, red headband I found on the ground one day and washed and now wore all the time. I was bright, visible, harmless. Not quite a jogger, though. In my right hand, I held a staple gun purchased a few days before. It was silver, heavy for its size. In my left was a stack of 3x5 cards with little sayings scrawled on them in my bad handwriting. Sayings, maxims I had written down, not many, just some things I came up with a few minutes before over a late-night bourbon. I was about to celebrate a birthday. Celebrate was not the word. I was in a mood. People with enormous egos do not age gracefully. That was one of the quotes, actually, the one on top. I rounded the first corner by my house and ran up to a tree in the front yard of a two-story brick number with perfectly square windows and no eaves on the roof. 2 trees out front. Sycamores? I wish I knew something about plant life. I chose the closer one. The loud pop from the staple gun made me flinch, but it was satisfying to see the card there at eye level, a bright golden rectangle in the streetlight. I imagined what it would look like in the morning when it was discovered by the owners of the house. What would they think? Students from the nearby university? Except Lipscomb was a good Christian school and nice kids don't staple trees. A gift, a birthday gift from me to them, a piece of harmless weirdness bestowed by the court jester of Green Hills to give them something to tell their coworkers about. Nothing unpredictable ever happens anymore, was the next card. I do like a bit of irony. I ran across the street to a dark yard with a handsome white birch that slanted off at a funny angle. Suddenly I knew I would tag 1 tree in each lawn for 6 houses in a row, 3 on each side. It would be mass vandalism, a full-scale commercial campaign. It would be a communal experience. They would discuss it on the 4th of July or whenever it is that neighbors get together these days. There was the popping sound and the card fixed there like a police notification. Nothing unpredictable happens anymore. Man, that is funny. It only took about 4 minutes to do the other yards, one Bible verse, a few sayings by Nietzsche, some random stuff I made up, like bring back the divine right of kings, and entropy is the real enemy. Nothing important, just a little bruising bohemian advice. Playful. I hoped the charm would not go unnoticed. A dog started barking in one of the backyards. I quickened my pace. No need to get arrested. There was never a need. But sometimes it happened. But then that was just another story, and isn't that the point? Anyway, it was sad. I had just left my house, and already I was out of cards. One left. I knew which house this one was for. There's a mansion about a mile from mine that must be the actual physical counterpart to the cartoon mansion owned by Mr. Burns on The Simpsons. The columns, the endless sweeping yard, the gentle slope of the ground down and away from the magisterial front porch, the tall iron fence, ancient and impressive. How much did that fence cost? More than I've made in the 10 years I've been a legal adult. Burnished, glossy black iron that stood like an endless row of spears, like a cartoon fence. I walked, cantered, ran a little bit, just off Granny White Pike, slight left, and I was there, standing before the spears, gazing uphill at the broad white columns turned yellow by the tasteful outdoor lighting. The trees, a dozen of them scattered unevenly throughout the immaculate front yard. Were there dogs? I doubted it, which is why I didn't hesitate to thrust my right foot in between two bars and lever myself in one smooth motion up and over the spears. I am from Idaho. I am athletic. I landed with a quiet thump and reached back through the fence to grab my staple gun and the index card. I looked up and took stock of my surroundings. Which tree? Which tree? The one closest to the house, of course. As luck would have it, there was a small Japanese maple, I knew because of the purple leaves, just left of the front porch. Perfect. I wanted whoever lived here, not their groundskeeper, to see the card. I wanted them to see it in the morning, the next morning. I picked the side that faced the door and sent one staple into the little trunk with a loud pop. Isn't this better than television? Of course, a light would go on and upstairs. Shit. I turned and broke into a full sprint, imagining Mr. Burns upstairs shouting, "Release the hounds!" But there were no hounds, just me clearing the fence and disappearing onto dark and friendly Tower Road. I could hear the echo of my own laughter bouncing off the surrounding brick houses. I am the youngest old man I know. Happy birthday, Corby. That was uplifting, don't you think? Oh, there's a few people here. Thanks, guys. I'm just gonna read a few more. Kind of getting into it a little bit. I should have taken requests, huh? Catfish. I kind of like that one if it's the one I'm thinking of. Some of these I can't quite remember. Yeah, I'll read this one. This is about 4 or 5 girlfriends ago. She left a mark, though, man. Tell you what. Come pick me up is what the text said. No punctuation, no please. A simple sentence, the simplest. No, not quite a sentence. It had no formal end. So, not a sentence, then a command. Or maybe a straightforward request. No, he knew her. A command. An imperative. Come pick me up. Drop what you're doing and come and get me. Come get me and take me from this place where I am to the place I hope to be. I may have something in mind, or you may be required to furnish one or more ideas, depending on how good your first idea is. I may feel like a beer, or I may feel like a coffee, or I may feel like something I haven't thought of and won't think of until you suggest it. So have a few ideas ready. Also, I may need to change my mind at any moment, so don't get too comfortable. Simon was already brushing his teeth. People who knew Simon knew he only did this on special occasions, and this was one of them, a special occasion. He was going to see the girl. Come pick me up. And I will reward you with the benefits of my presence. Those benefits are as follows. I will permit you to attempt to make me laugh, to dig deep into your repertoire of wit and folly, spin one of your more far-fetched stories out while I listen, perhaps only distractedly. If you're successful, you will have your reward. You will see me smile. You will watch my eyes twinkle like distant stars, dance around like gypsies, and you will be glad because you know they are dancing despite themselves. I dare you to try. Come pick me up. I believe I will. The season summer, the night hot, the car heading south. Simon finished the text and returned his hands to the wheel to wait out the red light. All four windows were down, not because the night was pleasant, but because he had no air conditioning. The skin on Simon's face was shiny at the forehead, his hair a little discouraged from the balloon of humidity that permeated his immediate environment and the 1,000 or so miles around it. He examined the wilted hairs drooping in their rearview mirror and absent-mindedly pushed them back up from his face, giving them a chance. They looked a little braver. He returned his attention to the scene beyond the windshield. The light changed from red to green. As he encouraged the car through its transition from second to third gear, Simon took stock of his general situation and was, at the moment, pleased. The girl he was about to see was the girl he loved. Loved. He didn't say it lightly. He was a silver salmon from the cold waters of the Pacific Northwest, and he had been swimming a long time looking. He had swum in all the blue-gray seas of the world, in choppy water and smooth, looking for one who would swim with him. Not just swim, but swim with him in the deep. He had been around. He had run with exotic clownfish and common trout, and there was something in them all that he liked, but nothing he loved. Most all the fish he knew hung near the surface where the food was easy. He liked to dive. He neared another light. It clicked red. As he slowed down, the car shuddered like an old man pushing a walker. Funny old car. The light changed while he watched, and he turned left onto the boulevard. And then a year ago, he had found this girl, this southern catfish, this blue-eyed rarity of a creature who, behind her smooth skin and slow gaze, kept hidden a heart which knew no bottom. He had found her, and he had seen the heart, and it was from that moment forever impossible the world could be anything but new. The water through which he moved grew warm. The shimmering tendrils of light now reached below the surface, deeper, down to the dark water to meet him where he was. He had found her, and the scales on his own skin changed color. They were always silver, lustrous, arrogant even, but this girl, this slippery catfish of a girl, had turned him blue. He was humbled. He would do anything. Okay, I'm here. A period. She was feeling lighthearted. Sweet. The car began to move imperceptibly faster, like a magnet was involved. He turned onto her street. Oh yes, ideas. He thought it over. He was going to suggest a long walk. She knew she was no hipster. She liked to walk. She wore chacos. He wheeled into the driveway of the house she shared. He turned the key and the engine shuddered and died. He cut the lights. He looked again in the mirror. The hairs lay down in defeat. No matter. She knew what he looked like. 20 feet to the door. Porch light on, a cloud of dizzy moths. He looked through the screen, pulled it open, and entered, saying her name with a question mark at the end. Just a minute. The lights inside were off. He stood in the living room and extended his arms, making a cross shape in the dark, airing himself out in the name of consideration. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath for no real reason other than he liked to do that. She must have come in at exactly the right second because he only got through one breath before her voice filled up the room like a breeze. What are you doing, Simon? Oh, are you airing yourself out because you stink? No, of course not. Let me smell. I have nothing to hide. He remembered then to open his eyes. She had turned on the light. The light came from behind, silhouetting her head and surrounding it with an imperceptible halo. He laughed out loud at the perfection of the gesture. She was the prettiest fish in the widest part of the warmest ocean. Her hair was down, was everywhere. Cascading was the word. He looked at her feet. Chacos. He took 2 steps toward her. She wrinkled her nose. We should probably go for a walk, she said. That way I don't have to smell you. He looked at her, smiling like a crook, like a pirate. Whatever you say, catfish. She cast him a wry glance, took another step forward. He could smell her perfume. There was a pause while the ocean refilled. She tilted her head slightly to the left. Then she advanced a little more, and then she moved toward him until her cheek was just under his chin. He felt her work the cheek a little more deeply into that place on his neck. She wrapped her arms around him beneath his arms, and he wrapped his arms around her over her shoulders, and he pulled her into him. A wave broke through the room and twisted their fingers and hair together like seaweed and washed the furniture out the front door, and the light from the lamp shivered in the reflected pools of seawater that lay at their feet, while the warm blue ocean drained away into the night. It's good to see you. Okay. Let's see. Man, that dude is fucking romantic. These are all like very emotional. Is there a funny one? Man, we need a funny one. I'll read this story. I'll tell you a story about this story. That'll be like a little bonus for tuning in. The story is called New Year's Day and the Great Snake. It's on page 173. Let's see if we can find it. There was a time when I lived in Nashville and didn't have a lot going on in music or anything. And so I worked at a hotel downtown called the Hermitage as a valet. I parked cars for a living for about 3 years. And there was this gal that was a high achieving sort, just a little younger than me, cute girl. And she worked at the Legislative Plaza, which is just across the street from the Hermitage. And it seemed like for a while there, she started kind of frequenting the joint, walking past on the sidewalk, and we got to know her a little bit. I got to know her a little bit, and we became friends. And somehow or another, this is before this book came out or anything, I think I'd just written this story and maybe put it on my Facebook page or something. And she told me a couple months later that she'd printed that story out, this story I'm about to read to you, and that she had this grandma. It was a real difficult lady, she said. She made it hard on the family. I guess she's had some anger and stuff inside her. And I didn't really know the details, just that she told me that she was really in a bad way. And also she was very ill toward the end of her life. And worst of all, that she didn't want to die. And they were there with her in her final moments, and she was tossing and turning. This is like kind of crazy, actually. Like when I start telling a story, I'm like, really? She was really upset, she was kind of thrashing around, and Keeling had really liked this story. And so she thought maybe she would read it. And so she read it all the way through, and her grandma asked her to read it once more, and she went to sleep the second time. So I thought that was one of the nicest. I don't know what it was. Something that made me feel like I should keep trying whatever it is I'm trying. So I'll read you this story here. It's called New Year's Day and the Great Snake. Let everyone else tell you their resolutions. I'm telling you a story. 2 days ago, I woke up in the town where I was raised. Twin Falls, Idaho. It was snowing. Great big complicated flakes that fell out without noise or fuss. Wet snow. Good snow. It had been a while, so I decided to go for a walk. I put on my little brother's boots and my dad's good hat, and I set out. There were crunching sounds, and I could see my breath. I was happy. I don't know why, but in my pocket, I brought with me a short stack of 3x5 cards. A trope. I have a habit when I'm reading of writing sentences, writing quotes down that I like, and I keep them in a stack on my dresser. Sometimes at odd moments, I sit down and read them. Anyway, I brought some from Nashville for the trip home, just a random collection of pinched off from the top of the stack, maybe 20 cards. It's been a long time since I'd looked at any of them, so here I am walking down the street I grew up on, pulling a card out of my pocket and reading it. We have now sunk to a depth at which the restatement of the obvious is the first duty of intelligent men. George Orwell. I laughed. My breath squirted out of me and made little shapes in the cold air. That was probably something I'd written down a long time ago. I remembered I used to enjoy pithy words like this because they led me to believe there were people out there, like George Orwell, I guess, who were in possession of a forgotten knowledge and who could be counted on to come forward and set the rest of us straight. I also remembered once driving past a billboard for a church that said simply in white letters on black, "We know the way." And I thought, man, I should go to that church. I'm a sucker for confident statements. There were no cars, so I walked down the middle of the street, the snow still falling, crunching, the day cold and gray and bright, and me warm in my own pea coat and my dad's good hat. I dug into my pocket for another card. Search your own heart with all diligence, for out of it flow all the issues of life. Proverbs 4:23. Well, I thought, I don't remember when I wrote this down, but it still means something to me. I looked at it and read it again and loud. Search your own heart with all diligence, for out of it flow all the issues of life. The quiet snow made the words sound holy. I thought, I love this because I feel it is true, and my own experience confirms it. I have never failed when I've listened to my heart without bias or predisposition. Then I thought, I'm the most religious agnostic person I know. I laughed, more breathy shapes in the air. The road I was on turned into another, and so I headed right toward the river. The river was the Snake, a slow old man who lives at the bottom of the canyon with his enormous sturgeon fish and a lot of my childhood memories. I walked and thought about how I had almost drowned on my 17th birthday because I tried to swim below the Shoshone Falls, just upriver from here. But how I had loved almost drowning because the girl I was dating at the time was there to watch and worry over me. A boy will subject himself to any number of horrors as long as there's a girl there to cry over him. Man, I should write that down, I thought. Another random card. Perhaps it will turn out that you are called to be an artist. Then take that destiny upon yourself and bear it, its burden and its greatness, without ever asking what recompense might come from outside. Rainier Maria Rilke. That one is a secret. You can't publicly identify with statements like that include the words burden, artist, greatness, because you sound like a pompous ass, especially when you are poor and unknown, because then you are in danger of being proud of your poorness and your unknownness, and nothing is more stupid than that. I dropped that card in the snow and kept walking, which didn't matter because I'd read it so many times I couldn't forget it if I tried. I was a few miles away from home now, and the wind was picking up. I was still warm, and there were several cards to read and thoughts to think, so I pressed on, and after another quiet mile, I was standing on the jagged lip of the Snake River Canyon. If only you could have seen this magnificent thing, 500 feet deep, nearly straight down all the way, black, wet rock carelessly decorated with white snow, and in the bottom a lazy blue river that had been there since the beginning of time. Idaho is a magical place. A card. It's no good trying to get rid of your aloneness. You've got to stick to it all your life. Only at times, the gap will be filled in. At times, but you have to wait for the times. Accept your own aloneness and stick to it all your life. And then accept the times when the gap is filled in, when they come. But they've got to come. You can't force them. T.H. Lawrence. I put the card back in my pocket and looked out on my childhood canyon and the great void before me. I stood for a long time, and then I sat. I felt the cold snow on my butt and the cold wind on my face, and looked at the bluing twilight sky, and I thought how very lucky I was to be alive, to feel cold and warm, to be inspired and disillusioned, to bleed and be healed, to see my laugh poke out and dissolve in the air before me, to feel lonely and loved. It was so good, this life. Just then a gust of wind took the hat off my head and carried it over the lip of the canyon. Oh, shit! I yelled and stood up and made some kind of vague gesture above saving it. But no, I watched it tumble down and then disappear into the milky blue river. Oh, shit, I said again. That was my dad's good hat, and I am a broke-ass clown poet. I turned around and walked away from the gaping canyon and began conjuring the funny story I would tell my father about how dogs up the street had tackled me and stolen his hat right off my head, and how lucky I was to be alive. It would be funny when I told it. Then I would ask my mom where he got it, and then I would spend some time on eBay. All right, maybe one or two more. Who knows if this is entertaining? I don't really. My friend Donna likes this story, so I'm going to read it. I like this story too. It's one of those stories that it's a good thing that it actually happened. There's this honest to goodness bus stop. Or I'm sorry, there's this intersection in Nashville. It's on the corner of 12th and Wedgwood, a common corner near downtown. It's a place everybody else. It's changed a good bit lately, but for a long time it was a little section of rough in the middle of a lot of whitewashed nicety. And there's a bus stop there, a little bus stop bench, covered bus stop bench. It'd be interesting people hanging out there. So this is about one night. In Nashville, the intersection of 12th Avenue South and Wedgwood is what you would call sketchy. 2 of the 4 corners are home to the barred window variety of gas station. A third marks the boundary of a large housing project. And on the last corner sits a covered bus stop, a little bench surrounded on 3 sides by plexiglass, a favored nightly gathering spot for the surrounding community. On this particular night, I was putting up posters for a show I had coming up. I'm thorough in my postering, partly because it helps get the word out, partly because it is some kind of sanctioned vandalism. Not quite okay, but you won't get arrested for it. 12th and Wedgwood is also one of the more traveled intersections in Nashville, 12th being a favorite corridor for the padded white warrior making his daily pilgrimage from Forest Hills to his office job downtown or on Music Row. In the course of a week, half of Davidson County drives through that intersection, so of course I would be there on a Sunday night with my staple gun and stack of posters. I have a job to do, after all. What happened was this. My friend Dylan wheeled his silver Honda into the parking lot of the better of the 2 gas stations to wait while I littered the intersection with advertisements. I jumped out and peppered the nearest pole with staples and paper, and with an almost subconscious paranoia, kept an eye on the bus stop bench. There were 4 men sitting side by side, watching me. As soon as I had finished stapling, I looked around and realized the other poles were made of metal and that I would be needing the tape I had left in the car. I started back toward the Honda when one of the men shouted something I couldn't hear. Not to be put off, I turned and shouted back, "I'm sorry?" Which is my way of saying, "What did you say?" The man repeated himself. I still couldn't understand, so I had to decide, continue back to the car or walk over and hear the man out. I do like a good adventure. I jogged across the street to where they were sitting like a panel of judges. They watched me in silence as I came toward them. Drawing near, I could see they were older. Two of them were bald, and one of the bald ones was dressed in a blinding white linen tunic and pants, complete with polished white shoes. He was the one who had spoken earlier, I guessed, because when he spoke now, it was in the same voice as before. "Man, what are you doing, tacking your sign all over our telephone poles?" I couldn't tell what kind of serious he was being, so I answered him straight. "Dude, I got a show coming up, and I got to let the people know." Now one of his friends spoke up. "You mean like a music show?" "Yeah, exactly." I held one of the posters up and pointed at my name. "That's me." "You putting up posters for your own show?" asked White Shoes, incredulous. It hadn't really struck me that this was the thing unbecoming of an artist. I thought about it and said, "Man, you got to shout your own name out loud as you can. No one else is going to do it for you." "I hear that," says White Shoes, raising his arm to high-five me. I met his hand right there. Felt good. White Shoes stood and announced he was going to help me put my posters up. Nothing could have pleased me more. I ran back to the car to get the tape, opening the door to Arcade Fire and a visibly agitated Dylan asking me if I was okay. "Dude, that guy's going to help me put up posters. It's going to be awesome," I said. Dylan shot me a worried look and turned up the music. I ran back to the bench and explained to White Shoes how this was going to go. By way of demonstration, I peeled off 4 strips of the blue painter's tape I was holding and stuck them onto his fingers, one to each. Then I said he would be the tape peeler, and I would place the poster on the pole, and we would then peel the pieces of tape off his fingers and onto the paper. He seemed to be fine with that. It took about 15 minutes to put up 20 posters on 4 poles, so we had time to get acquainted. "So, what are y'all doing?" I asked. "Just, sitting there?" I mean, I'm curious. White Shoes was putting tape on his fingers. "Man, we sit here every Sunday night. Have for years. Sometimes we have a little sip, but tonight we just sitting, watching the world go by, "Yeah, man, I do that all the time." He held out his hand to present the tape. For some reason, he put the blue strips of tape on the tops of his fingers instead of the inside like I would. Dark brown fingers with little childish strips of bright blue. I took the first piece and reached up to begin taping one of the corners down. "Where do you live?" I asked. He pointed past my head to the housing project. "In there, about 4 rows back." He smiled. "Been there about 35 years. I took the next piece of tape off his finger. 35 years is a long time, man. "Were you born here?" "Nah, I was born in Atlanta. I come up to Nashville after Vietnam to be with my brother." "Wait, what? How old are you? Vietnam was like 3 wars ago." "I'm 59 years old, pup." He handed me a piece of tape. "But I'm still chasing the ladies like I was 18. He smiled and let out a wheezy little laugh. He had wrinkles around his mouth that made him look sad, and his eyes were yellowish. That was age, but there was something still youthful in him. His skin was smooth, and his teeth were all there and still white. "I bet you do all right with the ladies," I said. What he said next I repeat to you only because if I left it out, this story would not be true. "Man, you don't know what goes on down over there. People get crazy. Let me just say, when you got your fingers in 2 girls and your dick in a third, then you partying." I was glad he didn't reach up to high-five me because my shock was sufficient to make motor function momentarily impossible. After a beat, I reached up for another strip of tape. Wow, that's pretty crazy. So, what do you do for work? He was busying his fingers with a new round of blue tape. I'm an orderly at Belton Tower. What's an orderly? Like a nurse? He stopped fiddling with the tape and looked at me. Kid, you don't know nothing. An orderly is the one who changes the bedpans and sheets and diapers for the people when they dyin'. I will say I was impressed with White Shoe's frankness. Oh, how long have you been working there? Man, long time. Long enough to see some sad shit. I didn't say anything. I stuck another piece of tape onto the corner of the poster. That poll done, we walked across the crosswalk, across 12th to the next corner, in front of the headlights of the waiting cars. I looked over and saw Dylan sitting in his idling Honda, watching us. I wanted White Shoes to tell me more about his job, but I didn't want to ask or didn't know how. But a lot of times, if you want someone to tell you something, all you have to do is not talk, and they will. We gathered around a telephone pole. I took a piece of tape from his finger and put it up. We were quiet for 3 strips. Finally, he said, "It's funny. People there. You know that place? Belton Tower? It's where people go when they're at the very end. It's a pretty nice place. It costs a lot of money, so only rich people go there, but they go there to die, and they know it, and their family knows it. Sometimes it takes a long time." Something in his voice made me pause. An old hustler can turn profit in the time it takes the light to change from green to red. He continued, "Man, you know what's weird? These lawyers and bankers and whatever, they have these cars and wives and houses on the beach. And then they here, just fading away. Can't tell you how many times I've been the last person they know in this world." We both looked up to watch an absolutely gorgeous black Mercedes speed past us. "What do you mean?" "I mean, people stop coming, you know? The families. Or they come once or twice a week, and they can't wait to get out of there as soon as they come in. But brother, I'm in there every day, day after day, doing the most personal shit to these people. People who fancy themselves princes, you know? I get to know them, and I'm there for them, and they know it. They trust me. Man, it'll tear you up." I thought about that while I did the thing with the tape, trying to think of something to say. Finally, I said, "That's cool. That it's you. They didn't know it was going to turn out like that, but here it is, and you're the one who's there. It's you." I'm not sure White Shoes heard that part because his yellow eyes glazed over, and I could see him back there in his head, 4 rows back, thinking of someone I had never met. "The thing about that job," he said quietly, "is those people pay a lot of money for being there. Sad as it is, there are a lot of worse places you could end up. But these orderlies I work with, man, some of them, they don't give a shit. They lazy, you know? And I get it. This work is nasty. Who wants to clean the shit off of some old man's ass? Not me. But that's our job. And these people, some of them, they so sick they can't speak for themselves. They just lying up in that bed day after day. They can't talk no more. They can't defend themselves. So some of these people I work with, they don't do nothing. They just let them sit there, sometimes for 2-3 days and whatever. And that ain't right. Man, these old people, I don't care who you are, they deserve some dignity. You can't just let a person lay there like that." White Shoe's glassy eyes were fixed on me now. "Man, I got my sins. Lord knows. But brother, I give a shit. People deserve a little respect. I know people who don't got nothing, never had nothing, but they still children of God. They still laugh and cry. I know some of the people I take care of are the same ones who drove through this very intersection looking at me like I'm what's wrong with the world. Funny. And a few years later, they all wasting away, grabbing my hand, pleading with me in the eyes not to leave the room because they're so scared they won't be there to see me come back. It gives you a little, you know, perspective. We were standing there in front of the gas station with the barred windows, and all the noise in the world was swirling around us. A few blocks away, I could see the lit up windows of Belton Tower, and I thought how at that very moment some old man was lying in his bed, thumbing through the pages of his life, afraid. Anyway, said White Shoes, let's finish this up. Got to get back to my friends. We did the last pull expertly because we had been practicing for 3 corners. He walked me across the street and back to Dylan's idling car. We stood for a second, awkwardly. You should come by the tower sometime and play for those people. They would love it. I'll do it, man. Hey, what's your name? He laughed. It don't matter, pup. I'll be seeing you. He turned and walked across the street toward the bus stop. I stood beside the closed door and watched him. Halfway across, he turned around and walked back. My name's Robert. Can I have $5? My turn to laugh. I fished some bills out of my pocket. Who wouldn't help out a friend? All right, guys. Thanks a lot for listening. That was fun.